Okay, here we are. Welcome back to Gadfly City Live with me, Monica Cardenas. And my guest today is Aaron Bos-Lun. He's Executive Director of Men4Choice. Don't forget to subscribe to Gadfly City on Substack and YouTube so you don't miss any of our future episodes. So, Aaron, thanks again for being here to talk about your work with Men4Choice.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, Monica. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for what you're creating at Gadfly. We've created something at Men for Choice, and you're filling a different, very important, very needed niche as well.
Thank you. And Men4Choice was founded in 2015. Can you tell me a little bit about why it was created and what the aims were then and now?
hmm Yeah, so the starting of Men for Choice was actually quite simple. Our co-founder Oren Jacobson was sitting in a presentation about the state of abortion access attacks that were happening in 2015. And in 7 minutes, he realized he hadn't known any of that as a guy. And he started to wonder why that was. And so he started looking around and he realized that 61% of men in America are pro choice. And yet he started going to reproductive freedom events, functions, and it was 90% women, 10% boyfriends and husbands. And he said, how is it that if more than half of men are pro choice, no one knows anything, no one does anything, no one donates, no one knocks doors? And that was the starting point. And then he met up with our other co founder,
Mm.
Ben Head, and what we lovingly refer to as the only constructive conversation two straight men have ever had in a bar. And they decided to create an organization to tap into the 61 million pro choice men in America who are almost entirely passive and on the sidelines and get them to be active. And that's what our mission is to get passively pro choice men off the sidelines and into the fight for reproductive freedom to change policy in the immediate because abortion bans cause enormous harm that men don't even think about, even if their values are there. And to also, in a long term sense, recognize that policy is downstream from culture. So to change the cultural attitudes that lead men to think it's appropriate to control women's bodies in the first place.
Excellent. I can't tell you how happy I am to know that you exist. What kind of progress have you made in the last decade, and what are you most proud of? How does everything work? How do you galvanize those men?
Yeah. Well, Men for Choice started in Chicago and then expanded throughout Illinois. And the initial proof of concept in the city of Chicago was, can we get guys to show up and do stuff for the reproductive freedom movement? Knock on doors, show up, donate. And the answer to that was yes. That evolved into playing a role in coalitions to pass a few pieces of legislation in Illinois, and where Men for Choice really started to take off was in 2000, headed towards 2017, 2018, a campaign called Call Bullshit, which was testing, can you message at a statewide level men calling out men and calling bullshit on men who want to control women's bodies with the belief that there would be a special power to that. And there was. And we ran ads
Mm,
that had things like, crowds of people out there holding signs that said, Viagra is against God's will. And it would say, if people were protesting men's reproductive health, you'd call bullshit. Why don't you do the same for women? And that played a role in successfully forcing the hand of the Illinois governor to support reproductive freedom in Illinois.
mm,
When we started to expand nationally, and I was the first national expansion hire 6 years ago. We created a fellowship for 18 to 28-year-old men for two reasons. One is that young men are the largest unorganized constituency of reproductive freedom supporters in the country. The values are
mm,
there, but they haven't been organized. And so to focus our efforts there. And then second was because in terms of that mission I told you about changing policy and changing culture, young people want to step up at elections. They want to show up for the movement. They want to be doing things. And imagine a world 30 years from now where you have thousands of men who had a foundational experience in their 20s where they learned how to speak, think, act about this in a way that no 50-year-old man alive today is able.
mhm.
So we started focusing on young men, and our fellowship program started with 7 guys 6 years ago. We had over 100 involved this spring and are recruiting right now for what's going to be our largest fellowship ever. And they're running peer to peer conversations, they're speaking out online. And then when it comes to election time, through our 501c4 Men for Choice advocacy, we mobilize like crazy. We knock doors, we make calls, we show up so that men are doing our part to support the longtime leaders of this movement who too often have been fighting this fight without the support of men, even though men are pro choice.
And why do you think that men don't think so much about reproductive rights? I imagine it's more complicated maybe than just that unexpected pregnancies don't usually become something they personally
Mhm.
need to manage. Is there more to it than that?
It's slightly more complicated, but not a lot more. We've identified over thousands of conversations in the last 10 years, four key barriers that prevent men from stepping up for reproductive freedom. The first is that men don't understand the harm caused by abortion bans. They just don't think about it. They don't know that, for example, 59% of patients in America who get abortions are already parents. They don't know the basics. They don't
Mm,
understand how complicated pregnancy is because how could they? Unless you're in a wheelchair, do you spend a lot of time thinking about building accessibility, for example? So, at the most basic level, men don't understand the harm caused by abortion bans. The second thing is that they think it's a women's issue and therefore not their issue. And so they go, okay, well, it may be, messed up what's happening to women if they've had that thought, and not all have, but I'm gonna be a good conscientious guy. I'm not gonna take up space. And the problem with that
mm,
is anti-choice men don't have that reservation at all. So the second thing is they think it's a women's issue. The third is that they don't see an on-ramp. So even if you get through those first two barriers, you don't see a way to step up. You see Planned Parenthood and you might say, I support Planned Parenthood, but like it's not appropriate for me to go to Planned Parenthood or whatever other
mm,
reason you might be coming up with. You don't see a clear on-ramp that is for you to step up on this issue. And the fourth is that even if you get through those first three barriers, you don't have a playbook. And guys don't want to mess up. Men in particular are very sensitive to making mistakes, being criticized. And so you don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. You don't know how to engage in this moment where
mm.
people in general don't know if their actions matter. That's even more true than it was 5 years ago. And so our whole model is based on addressing those four barriers in order to understand the
Mhm.
harm caused by abortion bans, understand that this, of course, affects women primarily, but it's not just a women's issue. This is about families, communities, basic fairness.
Mhm.
To have an on ramp, which is what we are, and to offer a playbook of how to engage.
And I guess part of the cultural change that you are working on, um, is related then to understanding that, any kind of abortion restrictions do affect men as well,
Mhm,
right? If their partner is suffering in some way or their life is in danger or their child's life is in danger, um, or their existing children, mother's life is in danger. All of those things do affect men, but I
sure.
guess because of the culture we live in, it's not, something that is at the front of their minds all the time, when it should be. So, I guess the most recent attacks on reproductive rights, have shown people, even, women who maybe had incorrect ideas about what reproductive rights includes.
Mhm,
Um, the most recent attacks have shown what how essential abortion care is and how much could go wrong in a pregnancy and why it's so important that we have these rights. So, do you think those experiences, like stories about women who were sent to bleed out in hospital parking lots before they can receive care, or women who've died waiting for abortion care, and leave young children behind. Do you think those stories getting more exposure, have helped your case, your efforts as well as, lots of other women who maybe were on the sidelines too?
mhm. Yeah, we know that personal stories are the most effective vehicle, to move people on this issue. There's a lot of data to back that up, and I think a thing happened, which is kind of a crazy thing. And I used to be a high school teacher, and so I'm particularly like, this reminds me of high school behavior, where we sort of look at what everyone else is saying and what seems to be cool to talk about. And because Donald Trump won the 2024 election, people concluded that abortion isn't an issue that you can win elections around, as opposed to what the data shows, which is that
Mm,
abortion is very much an issue that moves voters. And people believed Donald Trump when he said he was going to leave abortion to the states. And I just want to name plainly that part of the reason Donald Trump was able to win is that he neutralized the abortion issue. The majority of Americans believe Donald Trump has paid for an abortion, and therefore don't think
mm,
he'll ever take abortion
mm.
away. And so there's
Is that a real statistic?
a statistic: 61,
Yeah.
sorry, 62% of Americans believe Donald Trump has paid for an abortion in his lifetime.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so no one really believes that he's going to take that right away. And the challenging part in this age of fragmentation and disinformation is that the message and the messenger matter. And so, for example, we work closely with many men whose wives have either lost their life or nearly lost their life due to abortion bans. And it's interesting because I've worked closely with these people, and I see the toll it takes on them, and I see how surprised they were and how much they
Mm,
want to speak out. And then I see when it goes online how a certain amount of people will say, "Well, that's misinformation. That can't be true." Because they wanna discount something that doesn't
mm,
conform with their narrative. And I think because that happens, we draw the outrageous conclusion that none of this matters ever, because sometimes it doesn't land. But it matters, and it matters if it comes person to person. So we train our fellows, for example, to look inside their own lives and what is it that makes you pro-choice? Guys have never thought about that before.
yeah.
And so it might be because your coach in high school taught you that fairness was the thing. It might be because your grandmother was someone who was really important to you, and you're a little uncomfortable with the idea that your wife might have fewer rights than your grandma did. It might
Mhm.
be any number of reasons, but whatever it is, we know that when people actually speak from a personal place and can speak to the people for whom they're a trusted messenger, that moves people. The interest is there. The Harvard
Mm.
Institute of Politics did a study in 2024, and it found that 57% of young men in America said that access to legal abortion was a very important factor in deciding what state they would live in.
Wow.
And at the same time, there's been almost no effort, except on the right, to communicate to young men. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you're living with this sense that, well, rights taken away, that feels abstract to me, that's a very different conversation than the actual implications of a government having the power to seize control over private medical
Mm.
decisions. And so I think we're in a moment of brokenness right now. We're in a moment of upheaval right now. And I think the key thing is that you need to show people the ways that their intrinsic discomfort, which the overwhelming majority of Americans have, only 19% of Americans believe abortion should be banned with no exceptions for rape, incest, life with a mother. So speaking to the 81% of Americans that this is serious and this is real, and do you want to live in a country where you or your wife could be denied care during a
Mhm.
miscarriage in a hospital? Um, or any number of horrific things that have happened. And so it
Mhm.
works if you do it, but you need to do it, and you need to do it a lot. And you can't kind of fall into, unfortunately, what I think is sort of a high school what's in, what's not mentality of, oh, abortion was 2024, and now we're on to the next thing. No one
Mhm.
wants the government to control their body or their wives.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does feel like it's, people have sort of lost interest in caring about abortion rights, and I hadn't attached that to Trump's most recent win, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Do there's also been alongside, um, Trump's rise, a surge in misogynistic hate, toward women,
Mhm.
which often includes attacks on reproductive rights, and even women who don't have or don't want children. So do you see your work, regarding changing culture to change policy? Do you see your work as part of a retaliation against that misogyny?
100%. I've started joking more and more that Men4Choice is a pyramid scheme to end misogyny. I saw I saw a thing that someone had posted a couple years ago where she said, "I want to suggest a pyramid scheme to end misogyny. If every
Mm,
man, I'm going to get the numbers a little off here, but if every man were to talk to one man a month and influence them, to sort of talk them out of misogynistic attitudes and assume a high failure rate, that you would reach some very high percentage of men in the entire world within 15 years, assuming people continue doing.
mm,
That's what the civil rights movement did, by the way.
mm,
That's what the labor movement did, and that's what we do. And so I have come to believe more and more when we started organizing young men as our focus, it was for the reason that I mentioned, that if you want to change policy and you want to change culture and you want to tap into the largest unorganized group of pro-choice supporters in the country, it's young men. But what I didn't fully appreciate until we were a couple years in and it started to get bigger and we started to see more engagement from our alumni and see the ways that they could apply their leadership among their peers, I have found it to be profoundly important that young men are able to have a formative experience that is fundamentally about supporting other people and where they
mhm,
get space to think about what it means to be a kind of man who supports others. And we've got a very diverse assortment of men at Men4Choice, and that's part of the strength of it. We have guys who look like me and kind of nerdy and glasses and the whole thing. And we have bodybuilders and we have everything in between. uh,
mhm,
and we all have our different reasons for doing this, but everyone has some kind of reason for being there. And the idea especially in a moment where so many are experiencing isolation, loneliness,
Mhm,
societal brokenness, broken families, broken hopes, broken aspirations, start
mhm,
fracturing of our idea of what America is. And young people, by the way, didn't even necessarily get the idea that America could work in the first place because they've never seen it work.
mhm,
In all of that, to think that young men are just going to come to the right conclusions because we think they're right or we studied them when we were in college, is missing the mark. If you create a
mhm,
community of young men who can influence other young men, then you'll start to get that. And what we see is profoundly powerful in what it means for young men to have a space where they go, you know what, I'm upset about what's happening in the country right now. And the way that I'm going to act that out is in this sort of brotherhood of men who believe that uplifting others is a sign of strength.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that is such a wonderful and useful retaliation against what's happening with the manosphere, let's call it, where it's all about me, me, me. How
Yeah,
can I get to the top? It doesn't matter who you have to tread over on the way. Just the idea of caring about other people and making that a priority can do so much to push against that kind of mindset.
that's right, and there's a really big advantage that we have over the manosphere crowd, is that their whole thing is based on fraud and bullshit, and ours
Yeah,
is based on belief
that too.
people already have, and getting them to act in alignment with that, and I think we live in such a cynical time that I sometimes hear from people, "Oh, supporting others. No one really believes that." And then I go about the rest of my day seeing that happen because of what
Mhm.
we built. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things, not to say that men are like shapeless beings outside of time and space with no self-interest. Everyone has self-interest. But part of your self-interest can be I'm the kind of man who stands up for the women in my life. Or as
Mhm.
far as that goes, the ways that I'm not okay with the government messing with me and my family. Because if
Mhm.
you're a straight man, in what world are you better off if someone like Ted Cruz or Ron DeSantis has more say in what happens in the planning of your family? And if you're a gay man, then the Venn diagram of people going after LGBT rights and abortion
Mhm.
rights is a circle. So
Mhm.
there's an intrinsic self interest for
Yeah.
men to say no, put their foot down, and stand up for other people while also recognizing it is in our interest to stop overreach from government to control medical decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. How can men get more involved in what you're doing, and what resources can they access through Men for Choice?
Yeah, well, I think a good first step, if you're looking to learn more, would be to watch our new documentary, Men for Choice Off the Sidelines, that tells the story of our first 10 years. You can watch that on YouTube, search Men for Choice with a four. And it's on day 89 publicly viewable now. And we've had 92,000 people watch it already, which we're very
Wow.
excited about. I think that shows this is speaking to people. But
Mhm.
again, only if you put in the effort to try to speak to people. So that would be a great first step if this conversation interests you. If you're looking to get involved, go to our website, men4choice.org with a four, men4choice.org, and fill out the take action form that you'll find there. We have a form that says, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And if you fill that form out, a member of our team will call you and they'll say, oh, I see you want to do X, Y, or Z. It's sort of the opposite of, most customer service now, where you put a thing in and no one contacts you, and then they direct you to the other one, and then the other one,
Mhm.
send you back to the first person. Like we're the opposite of that. We're organized. Um, so fill out the take action form. Or if that feels too complicated, like right now, get out your phone and type an email to info at menforchoice.org with a four, and say you heard me on the Gadfly stream and you want to get involved, and we'll reply to that. The key things for men to do are to influence the other men around them, to knock on doors at election time, to donate, especially to abortion funds, and to show up. in the ways that the leaders of this movement want to see men show up. And so Men for Choice itself is an on ramp, and we have lots of other resources. But I'm going to assume that anyone who's listening to this and going, I want to do something, can email info@men4choice.org, can go to men4choice.org.com and fill out the take action form. And if you're the kind of guy who wants to do something about this, we are an on ramp, and we'll get you hooked up with the right way to act out your beliefs.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, and everyone at Men for Choice for the work that you're doing. I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it, and it's been really uplifting just to have this conversation and hear about the work that you're doing. So, thank you.
Appreciate it, Monica. Thanks so much for having me on, and thank you for your contributions to this crazy moment we're in.
Thanks. And thank you all for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to Gadfly City on Substack and YouTube. See you next week.